Yeah.
Marvellous. Hi everybody, I'm Amy. I'm doing my PhD currently at Northumbria University. My PhD is entitled Keen on Green, working with residents to develop interventions for promoting biodiversity in urban green spaces and gardens. I'm 2 years in to a 5-year part-time PhD, and my PhD itself is interdisciplinary, so it sits between the psychology and the ecology departments, and my supervisors sit between both as well. And the kind of main aim of the PhD is to investigate both human attitudes and behaviours related to implementing biodiversity interventions in gardens. So, for example, that could be putting in additional planting to provide more food or refuge for animals. It could be changing management regimes, so for example, reducing mowing. So looking at people's kind of attitudes and behaviours towards those interventions, but also kind of from the ecology side of things, assessing the ecological impact that these interventions can have both on biodiversity and wildlife. Before I start, I'd like to say a couple of acknowledgements, obviously to my supervision team for supporting me throughout my journey so far. But the actual piece of research that I'm going to be discussing today wouldn't have been able to happen without the Natural History Society. So thanks to James and Ellie for putting me kind of in touch with the Biodiversity events in the first place, to Holly and Emily for kind of conducting the events and inviting me along. Obviously all the volunteers that made the events happen, and to my participants as well, who took part in my surveys. So, what I'm going to talk about today is our first study. So it was people's thoughts and feelings towards biodiversity in residential gardens. And this took place summer just gone, so summer 2025, and that's what we're going to be having a look at. So some of you might be aware, from the State of Nature report, the UK is actually considered one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. We've had declines in lots of different taxa, but for just one example, we've had declines in distributions of pollinators by about 18%. And urban green spaces, so for example residential gardens, have the capacity to support higher pollinator abundance and diversity, and also they have the capacity to positively support human health and well-being as well. In the UK, we've got around 88% of households having access to either a shared or private garden, so we have the capacity there to potentially support and improve biodiversity. However, garden owners may be reluctant to implement changes within their gardens, and that's what we wanted to have a look at in our research. So when we look at pro-environmental behaviours, what we're looking at are actions that contribute to environmental protection or conservation. So, for example, it could be things like recycling, or it could be things like making active changes within your own environment to support the environment. And different kind of factors encourage engagement with pro-environmental behaviours. So, for example, knowledge. Research suggests that knowledge is a key factor to consider in terms of acceptance of biodiversity interventions. If you've got kind of increased knowledge, people will engage with these interventions. If people don't have knowledge within the area, it can often be a barrier to accepting those interventions. Nature connectedness as well, so how connected we feel with the natural environment around us, impacts our well-being and also our interest in conservation. So again, in turn, kind of feeds into these pro-environmental behaviours. So we went to some BioBlitz events. Now some of you in the room might have already been to a BioBlitz, but for those who haven't, a BioBlitz basically involves experts and members of the public kind of coming together to collect data on the variety of plants and animals that they find in a given area at a given time. This is a photo taken from one of the events. We've got lots of different spotter sheets here, nets where people can catch different vertebrates and different kind of pots where we can put the animals in so we can help identify them. So BioBlitz events are there to collect data on biodiversity, but they're also there to connect people with nature as well. So what we wanted to look at is whether these nature-based events could impact our nature connectedness, could impact our knowledge, and therefore impact and change our pro-environmental behaviours or our feelings about pro-environmental behaviours. So nature-based events can impact our nature connectedness by making us more aware of our natural surroundings. It might advocate a sense of place, and so then make us feel more connected with nature and again encourage pro-environmental behaviours. It can also increase our knowledge base, so participants of Biodiversity events have quite high levels of self-reported knowledge gain from the event itself. So if kind of attending a Biodiversity improves knowledge, then again this could encourage pro-environmental behaviours. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to engage with people who were participating in these Biodiversity events, and we wanted to see how participating in that event might impact their willingness to promote biodiversity in their own green space at home. And so what we did was we kind of turned up at these events, surveys in hand, asked people if they wanted to participate. If they did, I gave them a survey before they participated in the BioBlitz. So they had this pre-survey, they then did the BioBlitz itself, the activity, and then afterwards they did a post-survey. In that post-survey they were given the option to kind of sign up for a 3-month follow-up survey as well. And as part of our surveys, we incorporated the COM-B model. And this is Mitchie's model, and it basically looks at the factors that determine behaviour. And it segregates them into 3 categories of capability, of motivation, and of opportunity. And we can use this to assess facilitators and barriers to behaviours. For example, people may be reluctant to engage in reduced mowing within their kind of environment at home, so in their gardens, because they might think their neighbours might negatively react to it, and therefore they're demonstrating a lack of social opportunity. Okay, so we can utilise this model to look at what might facilitate behaviour and what might be a barrier to it. So what we did is took this and gave ourselves a statement for each kind of subcomponent of the COM-B model to ask our participants. So for example, for physical capability, it was I have the physical skill, strength and stamina to support biodiversity in my garden. For example, for the social opportunity, like what we just discussed before, my family and neighbours would like me to support biodiversity in my garden. So we gave our participants these statements, and they had to answer from 0 to 10, from kind of strongly disagree to strongly agree. We wanted to know what they had in their garden already, so kind of get a baseline for what they already had in their garden. So we gave them a list of these 13 features and just asked them to tick whether they had it present or not present within their garden. We wanted to look at knowledge, and so what we did is we gave 25 pictures to our participants. 10 of those pictures were birds, and 15 of them were invertebrates. So we had 5 ladybirds, we had 5 bumblebees, and we had 5 butterflies as well. Now we tried to use conspicuous species. All of them were considered kind of common species, and they were in, for example, the birds were from the top 10 in the RSPB Birdwatch for 2025. So we were trying to use recognisable species for people to answer the questions to. And each one was multiple choice, with the option of being able to say, I don't know, as well if they didn't feel they could answer. And we wanted to know people's intention. So we asked in the survey whether they intended to put something in their garden to improve biodiversity, or you can see it's I intend, I'm likely, and at the end there, I'm reluctant to. So how this was kind of displayed within our surveys. In our pre-survey, so the one that people completed before they did the BioBlitz, we asked them the COM-B questions. So we asked them about their capabilities, their opportunities and their motivations. We asked them their intentions, so whether they intended to put anything in their garden to help support biodiversity. We asked them about their behaviour, so what they already had in their gardens. And we assessed their knowledge as well, so asking them 25 different questions about whether they could ID the species. They then participated in the BioBlitz, and then after the BioBlitz, we basically gave them a very similar survey. We asked them the COM-B questions again to see if there was any changes in their capabilities, opportunities and motivation. We asked them the intention questions again to see if there was a change there, and the same with knowledge. And then we had a 3-month follow-up where we just asked behaviour. So for this one we basically wanted to see if they had done anything in their garden, whether they taken anything extra in terms of what they had in their garden. And in terms of what we hypothesised, we thought that willingness to promote biodiversity in their own garden would likely be higher after participating in the BioBlitz. We thought the COM-B factors, so those capabilities, opportunities, motivations, would be greater after completing the BioBlitz. and we thought that the COM-B factors would be more predictive over socio-demographic factors for intention to promote biodiversity in gardens. So, over the summer, with thanks to the help of the Natural History Society, I attended 6 events, so 6 bioblitzers. We did 24.5 hours worth of bioblitzing, and we engaged with lots and lots of different people. Over 200 people we kind of had chats with on the day. And this is just the kind of same picture again, so you can see the setups with all the different equipment that we had. The Natural History Society prints out the spotter sheets, and people can take those away so they can utilise them in their own spaces. But they also have lots of good resources that people can kind of come back to the table and kind of have a look and see if they can ID what they've found in their little pot. And so the results are very much under construction. However, I've started looking at the pre-survey data. So from these kind of people that we had chats with on the day, I managed to get 73 pre-surveys and 32 post-surveys after the bioblitz. So that means I've got 32 surveys where I can match the kind of pre-survey data and their post-survey data, which is what I'm still kind of working on now, but what we're going to look at today is the pre-survey stuff. So we asked people what was motivating them to come to a bioblitz event, and the motivation statements kind of fell into 4 categories. One's about learning, so whether they wanted to learn about wildlife, whether they wanted to do something educational, about values, so caring about the environment, participating in research, linking to the outdoors, so wanting to spend time in nature and spend time outdoors, and the kind of social aspect of it as well, so it being an enjoyable activity to do with family, or wanting to meet people with similar interests. And the 3 kind of top motivations, the top motivation out of the 3 was I care about the environment, so a kind of values-based motivation, and the other 2 were about learning. So people wanted to learn about wildlife and they wanted to do something educational. So they wanted to get something from this event in terms of their learning experience as well. In terms of the COM-B stuff, so the capabilities, opportunities and motivation, so this little graph here looks at the 6 different kind of subcategories of the COM-B, and the people, remember, answered between 0 and 10, and the boxes indicate averages. So the line in the middle represents the median, the red square represents the mean, and just to kind of glance over it, you can see that all of them averages are above 5, so they're kind of more in the agreeing side of the scale. And so we've got people kind of that agreeing that they are kind of capable and motivated, and they have the opportunity to do something within their garden on average. In terms of behaviour, so this was what people had in their gardens already. The table on your left shows the 13 items and shows the count out of the 73 surveys of people who had that in their garden, and obviously the percentage as well. So top of the list we've got flowering plants, so 90% of our participants had flowering plants in their garden, followed secondly at 67% by hedges and shrubs. At the bottom of the list there you can see ponds at 20% and other nest boxes, so outside of kind of a bird nest box, at 17%. The graph on the right though shows our results compared to that of UK estimates. So the kind of reddy, orangey bar is my sample group, the bioblitz sample, and the kind of bluey-greeny bar is the UK estimate. So you can see for kind of bird feeding, nest box and pond, our group has more than you would than is estimated for the kind of UK population in terms of features in their gardens. So a higher percentage have bird feeders in their garden, a higher percentage have nest boxes, which suggests that our group that we kind of did our surveys on are already fairly invested in their gardens and have lots of features in their gardens that support wildlife. We looked at knowledge, and so this table here shows our 25 species that we looked at in our knowledge questions, and it shows the percentage of people that got them right. So at the top of the list, 97% of our respondents correctly identified a robin. You can see the top 10 are all birds minus 2. The 2 invertebrates that have snuck up into the top 10 are the 2-spot ladybird and the 7-spot ladybird. Now, that might be because given a picture of a 2-spot ladybird and a 7-spot ladybird and a multiple choice option of what it is, it's a bit of a say what you see. So you could hazard a guess that that is a 2-spot ladybird. So the majority of the top 10 of the list is birds. And if we kind of separate out birds and invertebrates, you can see that more people knew more birds than they did invertebrates. So the knowledge about birds was much better than knowledge about invertebrates, which I think we would all assume would be the case anyway. But what will be interesting is when we start looking at the post-survey data, as you saw from the kind of tables, a lot of the information and the kind of sheets that are provided by the Natural History Society for these biodiversities are surrounding invertebrates. So it'll be quite interesting to see people's knowledge of invertebrates has increased once they've done the biodiversity, because that's the kind of information that they've been given. We also asked people their intentions. So looking at kind of whether they intended to put something in their garden, and I've put up here the reluctance one as well. So in terms of intention, on the other side, on the left, less than 20% strongly disagree with intending to put something in their garden, and around 60% are strongly agreeing or agreeing to intending on putting something in their garden to improve biodiversity in the next 3 months. In terms of reluctance, so we've got kind of a high intention there. In terms of reluctance, over 75% either strongly disagree or disagree that they are reluctant to put something in their garden. So again, we've got people that are fairly kind of on board, if you like, with putting things in their garden. So I haven't looked at any of the post-survey data yet, but I just wanted to include this in here because I think it nicely kind of represents the events themselves, kind of that the Natural History Society put on. We asked a little kind of evaluating section at the end of the post-survey. The colours haven't come through very well, but this pale colour on the side here is representing a great deal. And so you can see at the top of the list there, in terms of the events, people are very, very positive about kind of how knowledgeable the staff and volunteers are, and very, very positive about kind of the organisation of the events. So it suggests that the events that are put on are kind of very well received by people. And again, the kind of next 4 statements are based on feelings that people get from these events. So these events are kind of making people feel very positively as well, which is really great. So, my next steps. So I am needing to now look at this post-survey data. So I want to look at these matched surveys that I've got, these 32 matched surveys, and see whether there are any increases in our kind of capabilities, opportunities, motivations, knowledge, intention between those people before they did the BioBlitz and after they did the BioBlitz. But as we've looked through the results, we can kind of see that our behaviour, so what people have in their gardens, is already kind of fairly high in comparison to a UK average estimate. We can see that our COM-B scores might be kind of further into the agreed section. So what I really want to do is conduct a comparative study to look at a group of people from the North East who are not engaged in any nature-based events. And I want to see what their scores are in terms of their COM-B, in terms of their intention, in terms of their knowledge initially. Because if there is a difference in the results between the people that are engaged in nature-based events and the people that are not engaged in nature-based events, then I think the main question is, well, what is motivating people to come to these events and engage with nature and engage with these events and kind of grasp this extra knowledge, and how can we engage people that are currently disengaged in terms of nature-based events? So thank you for listening. I'm happy to take any questions.